Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 497 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's show, I'm going to be speaking with the father of a young type 1. The father's name is Chad, and Chad has feelings. Actually, boys have feelings. We're going to talk about them today. And so much more. Please remember while you're listening that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Perhaps you've been hearing about the Pro Tip series from the Juicebox Podcast and like to learn more. You can find them at episode 210 right in your podcast player. Or if you'd like to pick through a little bit online first, diabetesprotip.com. That's pretty much all I have for you. Here comes Chad. Have you always wanted to help with type 1 diabetes research, but don't have the time or the means to be involved in a study? Well, you should check out the T1D Exchange. You can support type 1 research and the Juicebox Podcast by going to t1dexchange.org/juicebox. When you get there, it's super simple to do and just takes a couple of minutes. You click on Join Our Registry Now, complete a simple survey, and you're done. T1D Exchange research has led to increased insurance coverage for blood glucose meter test strips, changes in the American Diabetes Association guidelines for pediatric A1C goals. It's helped with FDA expansion of Dexcom CGM labeling and Medicare coverage for CGM devices. Everything you do will be 100% HIPAA compliant and 1,000,000% anonymous. Sometimes, after you fill out the survey, the T1D Exchange will reach out to you with other opportunities that you can either take advantage of or not. I've heard some listeners of the podcast have been contacted recently, and they were really happy that they were. T1dexchange.org/juicebox. Check it out.
Hello, name's Chad. I'm the father to a 3-year-old diabetic, Carson. Carson was diagnosed on September 11th of 2019. Changed our life forever. Spoke to be on this because I noticed ever since day one, it seemed like the doctors, were talking specifically to my wife, and it was like sometimes I wasn't even in the room, and I didn't know if that was a general perception in the community with parents raising type 1 children or not.
Well, I found your note very interesting because this is really the tone that you came from, and I want to get to all of it. But before I do, you're an East Coast person, right? Just in general?
I'm in northeastern Maryland.
All right, so I want to make sure about something before we start, especially after last night's Monday Night Football game. You didn't name that poor kid after Carson Wentz, did you?
No, absolutely. Actually, that's funny because we live 45 minutes from Philadelphia. I grew up in New England. I'm a Patriots fan.
Okay.
And my wife actually wished kind of harm on Carson Wentz because she did not want the name to become popular.
Well, he fixed that. Don't worry.
Yeah.
My goodness.
She said, she goes, I hope she's like, this is bad, but I hope he gets injured. That way, this name just doesn't start popping up everywhere. And that season, he pretty much broke his leg. He's tore his ACL. And then Nick Foles came in and beat my Patriots in the Super Bowl.
So you got paid back. But
yeah, exactly.
Hopefully everyone's not going to be named Carson 15 years from now.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I thought we did at the time in 2000, actually 1999, when we came up with the name. When we chose Cole, we didn't know anybody who named their kid Cole, and now it's much more common. He actually plays on in college, there are 2 Coles on his baseball team.
Oh, wow.
And so we didn't do a great job. But yeah, Carson Wentz took care of this for you. But I love the story. So you put the Ooga Booga on Carson, and then they came back around and got you in the Super Bowl. And
yes.
Yeah, and it really did too, because we just basically sent out like guy number 2 to beat the hell out of you. It was
yeah.
Well,
and Brady had like the game of his life, and it still wasn't enough.
You know, it's so funny, and we won't talk about football long, but my mom's like almost 80, and I was driving her somewhere the other day, and we spent a good amount of time in the car talking about that Super Bowl, and she loves football. And I said it was just whoever had the ball last. Like if the Patriots would have just got the ball back one more time. Like I actually think there's a strong case to be made that Brandon Graham won the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah,
you know, knocking the ball out of Brady's hand
strip
like
sack.
That. Yeah. But anyway, it's hilarious that all came back around to get you. By the way, your wife, I want to meet sometime. Vicious lady. She couldn't have just like wished that he changed his name or something like that.
Yeah. No, she's pretty harsh. And,
she went right for the kill, I hope a car falls on it. Like, interesting. Anyway, so a couple things about your note grabbed me. One that I think we're going to spend a fair amount of time talking about was how you felt in the room where the doctor was sort of looking through you. And how in general, when you're paying attention online, you don't see a ton of men involved. And moreover, you do see a lot of moms complaining about their husbands.
Yes.
So
yes.
I don't know that you found, an issue in the diabetes community. I think you just found an issue in the, in the world. But first, tell me a little bit about the diagnosis. You were there as it happened and involved from the very beginning?
Yep. So we noticed the telltale signs. He was drinking like half a gallon of water a day, losing weight. At first we just thought, Carson's a big kid. He was a 10-pound baby at birth. And at first, my wife just thought, oh, he's losing his baby fat. And then he's peeing through his diaper every night. And, she looked it up early. We start seeing signs in June of 2019. And, she wanted to get an appointment with the doctor. And it just so happened they were able to get us in just 3 weeks after his second birthday for his 2-year exam. And, she pushed the doctor. I want to be, I want him tested for type 1. I see all these signs. She wasn't too concerned. And she was actually pushing against the test, and we were like, hey, it's a simple test. And, they tested the urine, and, glucose showed up in the urine. She actually called me at work. I just ran a 5K that morning. I was late coming into work. My coworkers and we were talking about 9/11, just where we were on that date. And I had specific coworker tell me, he said, not everyone 9/11 means the same. I have an old coworker whose child was born on 9/11. He spent the morning, at the hospital, enjoying this wonderful day, the birth of his son.
Right.
And he's, I specifically remember him telling me, he's like, not everyone's 9/11 is the same. Then I walk into work, and, someone goes, someone's phone's been ringing off the hook. And I go to my cubicle, and there's like 6-7 missed calls from my wife. And I called her back, and she told me that, there was glucose in the urine, to get home and pack bags. There's a really good children's hospital near us, AI DuPont, Wilmington, Delaware. But I guess our insurance didn't cover overnight stays there. And so they said, you are covered up at CHOP in Philadelphia. So it ended up CHOP's, one of the top children's diabetes hospitals in the world. So we turned out lucky there. So I packed my bag. Carson's blood sugar was 370 something. It wasn't, crazy, but it was high. And we stayed there for 3 nights for the training. I was hands-on with the training, looking up glucose monitors and
trying to figure
insulin
things out.
pumps very early.
Yeah.
In fact, after the first night, his blood sugar the next morning was a perfect 100. I remember that vividly.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that a 370 now, what it meant to you back then, you were just like, oh, they tell me his blood sugar's high and he has diabetes, and now, bitch, it feels a little different.
Yeah, and now we start fretting over, 180, 200.
Sounds like you guys caught it really quickly, though. 370 is, elevated, obviously, but I mean, he was nowhere near DKA or anything like that.
No, he was, perfectly fine. We were in there with another family whose child was in DKA, and that was scary. And I'm glad that I have my wife, and she's able. Part of it is she's a stay-at-home mom, so she's able to see those signs day in and day out. So that helped us a lot.
Is he your only child, or your?
So he is our only child, but we do have custody of our 7-year-old niece, Sophia. So it's like we have 2 children.
Right. But he was my point was, it's the first baby your wife had raised. It wasn't.
Yes.
Well, she did a good job too, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she's got magic powers.
Yeah.
She can find diabetes and break professional quarterbacks' legs.
Yeah.
My goodness. I just want to say one last time that the Eagles are terrible. I'm an Eagles fan, and I'm going to just come out and say it right now. I can tell you all what happened, but I don't think anybody here wants to hear it, but I am facing up to it. They are an absolutely pitiful football team, top to bottom.
But they're only like half a game out in the NFC.
Well,
so
they're a pitiful football team in a pitiful division. That's for certain. Yeah, I know they're leaving the field, and the announcer's like, the Eagles are 3-7-1 or whatever they are, and he's like, they're still in it. If only they could win 2 games in a row, they'd be the champions. A mess. Anyway, okay, so your 9/11 is not everybody else's 9/11 anymore, and somebody puts the specter of it over top of you just moments before you find out that that's the case. It would have been nice if you would have said something like, I know some people who win the lottery on 9/11. And by the way, Chad, your phone's been ringing all morning.
Yeah. I won the Powerball, baby.
Yeah.
We're moving.
People around you are magical, but they don't use their powers well at all. I know. No. So, well, I mean, Arden's, I guess by now we've hinted around it long enough that is Arden's Children's Hospital, CHOP in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
Okay. People must know by now listening. But she was diagnosed in Virginia because we were on vacation.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. But I've never had anything but good experiences at CHOP. And they definitely are a classy hospital that's on the on the bend of the cutting edge, the way they talk to people. I definitely think that you lucked out going there, but I imagine that's not your hospital anymore. You don't make the trip every time.
No,
right?
no, we still do. It's less than an hour away. So
no kidding.
Yeah.
Oh,
we love it that much. Especially our diabetes educator. That helped out a lot. Someone walking in the room after your son's diagnosed and him being diagnosed as well. Shout out to Ken. Just seeing a healthy man my age, living, breathing diabetes every day himself. So
makes you feel right.
Yeah.
So your CDE is a guy named Ken, and he has type 1?
Yes.
Oh, look at you, Ken, doing good work, making Chad's family feel better. Very nice. I the only thing about that place that I hate is parking at it and getting.
Oh yeah. It's especially the Berger Center. Yeah,
it's terrible. I'm making laps. I'm like, that was it.
I had to place a pin on my Google Maps just so I know exactly where to go every time because I miss it. Every time.
Well, Chad, your child was lucky enough to be diagnosed in the age of cell phones. I had it scratched out on a piece of paper with a hand-drawn thing that a friend of mine who would work down there once was like, then you go around this corner and through this place here and you turn. I'm like, okay. Driving down, my baby's with me. My wife's back at work. I'm like, it's fine. Everything's fine. This is exactly how I planned life. It's going to be all right. Never really felt all right, I guess. But now it does, and I think that's kind of important to say because I just recently was watching a newly diagnosed family ask some questions online, and it just occurred to me as they were speaking that so soon they won't feel like this, and they don't and they don't realize it. You know, it's kind of sucks.
So I started listening to your very first episodes. I think I'm up to 25, but it was just 5 years ago, and that feels like the Stone Age, and they're progressing these families so much. Carson, he was diagnosed in September, and by the end of October, he was on a Dexcom G6. By the beginning of November, we were testing out the Omnipod on him, and December 1st, he was live with insulin in it. So we progress. Chop was very good at progressing us very quick, and by January 1st, he had his own cell phone. So.
I do remember Arden being in kindergarten with an iPhone, and every parent in the town hating me and my wife for causing that uproar. And I just used to, and it was funny. Like, so we all in the beginning, we just wanted Arden to be able to call us from the bus. That was our whole goal. And we took her to the store, and no one was looking to buy Arden an expensive cell phone when she was 5. Trust me. And we, we're like these little flip phones that used to exist, and the little shells and the clam shells and everything. We tried so hard in the store to teach her how to like use it. And she just, the weird menus, and she couldn't remember it and everything. But that, you have to admit, they threw that iPhone in front of her, and 5 seconds later, she had the whole thing figured out and knew how to use it. We were like, all right, well, here's your baby crack. And if you ever feel dizzy on the bus, call daddy. It was pretty much the whole thing. But the other families were pissed. They were just very unhappy that Arden was wandering around with an iPhone. She is 16. And she's 11 in the podcast I'm listening to. That's crazy. In the podcast you're listening to right now, she's 11. That's interesting.
Yes.
My point is, she's 16. She's never broken an iPhone.
Really?
Yep. She's had one since she was 5. She's never broken one ever.
I think I broke 5 when I was 25 alone.
I threw mine. I tried to put mine in my pocket the other day, and for some reason just threw it at the floor. I was like, oh, I'm getting old. I don't want to.
And they're always within like 3 months after buying it, brand new.
Yeah, it's brand new. Anyway, so Chad, I do want to really dig in, because I don't know many. I guess, how do I want to put this? So I have access to the demographics of the private Facebook group for the podcast, and it's it's obviously not everybody that listens, and it's not everybody in the world. But I can tell you that overwhelmingly, they're women in the group. And the men that are in there are more likely to be type 1s themselves.
Yes.
Not the fathers of type 1s. A lot of fathers get added to the group by the mothers, but I don't see them being active. I don't know that doesn't mean that they're not watching, because I can also see the analytics, and a huge portion of the people who are members of the group are active within the group every day, although a smaller percentage of them actually post and answer questions and stuff like that. It's, the way the internet works. But it is incredibly uncommon to hear from men who don't have type 1. And I am aware of some type 1 groups for fathers of children with type 1 diabetes. And I don't spend much time in them at all. But the times I have looked, they are more of I don't even know how to put it. It's like
a relief valve.
Yeah. It's like the digital equivalent of getting together and shooting or kicking or yelling at something.
Yes.
Is what it feels like.
Yes.
And I don't know, psychologically, I don't know what that is. I'm sure we could easily dig in and, go down the rabbit hole of boys are taught not to, show their feelings and things like that or whatever. But it didn't strike you that way. It obviously didn't strike me that way. I was, I don't ever talk about it on here very much, but in my book, I joke that I am really just too ovary shy of being able to give birth, because I'm a lady, basically, in a lot of ways, because I grew up through my mid 20s, 30s, and 40s, being a stay-at-home parent, and, became very evident very quickly that if my kids didn't have that thing that my wife would have intrinsically known that I didn't really know, that kind of care, that it was going to be detrimental to them. So I just sort of threw myself into it, completely head first. I just, this is what I'm going to do. So I don't have that. When you see me share or hear me share on here, it's a pretty direct valve right to my heart. I'm not protecting how I sound or anything like that. I'm not trying to produce a veneer of, masculinity. I've been over that for a while. You only have to be a stay-at-home dad before it's a thing, so long before you realize that, you are the heel of a lot of whispering, in circles. I'm sure it's not like that any longer, but
I think as we, especially younger generations, that will change with time.
Having said that, Chad, if I could lean the other way for a second, let me have 1980s Scott talk to you for a second. I don't see a ton of guys built like construction workers who are stay-at-home dads either. You know, 6'4" guys that could bench press a car, that have just decided not to work. I mean, I'm sure there are some, but they mostly look like me, although I wish I was taller, but that's not the point. I'll tell you right now, I'm going to get your wife to wish for my height. Hell, I'd be happy if I could just get my phone back in my pocket. Could you tell her to just say out loud, something about Scott always successfully putting his phone away? See if
I'll get her to do that.
Her magic will work on me. But you're a working guy. You're not the stay-at-home. Is there something about you or how you grew up that made you want to be involved?
So I think being the only boy, surrounded by girls, and my dad not around a lot, maybe that helped deal with
Chad, you're a couple ovary shy of having a baby too. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, maybe. It's too much. It'd be too much pain for me. I rarely get sick. I got sick a couple of years ago, went to the doctor, and I was like, I don't know, something's really wrong with me, and the doctor, somebody's, Chad, you have a cold.
Last week I got sick and I was on the sofa for 4 days. Kelly's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I feel a little flush. And when I turn my head too fast, I feel dizzy.
I once passed out over, I swear I almost cut off my thumb. My wife says it was just it's a paper cut, but I guess I almost passed out. So.
It's so funny. I've really been injured in my life, like really injured. And that I've handled fine.
Yes.
Like I've, if you ever meet me, look for the scar on my left hand that goes midway through my thumb down into my palm. And like I filleted my hand open, and that I handled completely fine. I've had welder's flash where I went blind for a few days. That I handled completely fine. I've had a giant molten piece of steel fall into my boot. And of course I couldn't get to it quickly enough. So the moisture in my foot put it out and just burned a hole right into the top of my foot. That's fine. Ripped my ankle apart. That I handled fine. If I get a little woozy when I turn my head.
Yeah. Well, that's what I told her. I said I was kneeling down looking at the cut, and then I stood up too fast and all the blood just rushed to, as you get older, when you stand up too fast, you get lightheaded.
Chad, you got the vapors. That's what happened.
Yeah.
You have an 1860 illness. You just have been overcome. That's all.
Exactly.
So you grew up in a family where your father wasn't around a ton. You had a bunch of sisters and a mom.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel like you have that more kind of caretaker vibe about you?
Yeah, I do. Things around the house, like household chores, are pretty 50-50 as much as they can be with the time a lot, with my 8 hours spent at the job. What did help out with caring for Carson was 6 months after diagnosis, coronavirus hits our streets, and I was at home with the family day in and day out. And also I had this master's project to finish my master's, and it revolved around just tracking all the different elements to type 1 diabetes. It was just a blueprint of a system, and I devoted a lot of research and and time into that. So I was learning about type 1 a lot. And during that time, I really was able to dig into like Carson's numbers and, fine tune adjustments with that.
What's your background in?
Systems engineering.
Oh, do you have that classic engineering brain?
Yes. Yeah. And I think that helped out tremendously with Carson's diagnosis. And then my wife, she's an accountant. She has a degree in accounting. She's good with numbers herself. So that helped out tremendously.
And you find that valuable. And so your management is going really well, right? For Carson?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So within 6 months, Carson was under 7 A1C, and at the year mark, he was under 6.
See, I want to pick through that a little bit, because my experience talking to people, there's certain buckets I'm finding people falling in the more and more experiences I have. For instance, I've said recently, nurses tend to struggle a lot with being the caregivers of people with type 1 diabetes, which is fascinating. There's something about how they're trained and what they do day to day that doesn't mesh with the part of type 1 that's more style and, than math.
Yes.
And I've now seen that so many times, I'm willing to say that out loud. I'm not saying, nurses can't figure it out. I'm just saying that they struggle. They feel like they have a natural built-in roadblock. But I've also noticed that people with engineering backgrounds seem to find their own way through it. It's not ever classically mathematical, and it's not usually completely like the way I talk about it. They find their own way. So what did you do? And
our that's funny you say that, because our diabetes educator, I remember at the 6-month mark, Carson's on a low basal rate just because of his size, and like all night he's at 0.1 units. Well, he was going high a few nights, and the problem with that size is you can only increase by 50% more insulin, and that's not really needed. So we throw in some random 0.15s into his nightly basal rate, or every other hour, and his diabetes educator is like, "What the hell are you guys doing? This is off." And I was like, "Hey, it works."
Yeah, I'm bumping and nudging with basal is what I'm doing. Yeah. Well, it's have you looked into, are you interested in Omnipod 5 when it comes out? You're using Omnipod, so are you going to go to an algorithm?
Yes. Yeah, very interesting. But I've read that I think there's an age requirement to it, 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah, listen, I'm not sure, but historically doctors can write things off label for use, and it's been done with diabetes in kids forever. I would think it would be more about you exhibiting that you can handle it.
Yes.
And that would be that. I'm looking at Arden's blood sugar right now. It's funny, it's 94. She's in class, and there's part of me that just is it's like, I wonder why it's not 89. Just ridiculous, right? But it's and I would interestingly come to some conclusion like the one you did, except I don't think about it in any of the terms you did. Like, I'm sure you were very just like, well, we'll do this, we'll do a little bit here and then move it up and move it down and move it up and move it down, and that'll keep the balance. By the way, that's kind of brilliant, Chad, being able to see, because when I say things like, basal doesn't, like when you make a change to your basal, it doesn't happen immediately.
Yeah.
You could make the leap in your head that if I just stagger it, then every once in a while we'll get a little bit of a push down, but it won't be enough to make him low.
Yes.
And then you tried it, which is huge. Because I spoke to someone yesterday on the phone, and she's like, I don't know what's wrong. My daughter's blood sugar has been high since she moved to an insulin pump. And people want to blame the pump right away. Like, when we were on MDI, it was fine. And now at this pump, and it's so high. So I'm asking my questions, picking through it. I said, what was her total basal on MDI? And she said, 13 units a day. And I said, and show me your basal rates now. We added them up, and it was 8 units. Yeah. And I said, I think we found the problem.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, but she gets low. I'm like, yeah, but, and then that's when the explanation starts. And it's such a simple thing that I'll say it here. a lot of you experience lows, make the reasonable determination that you have too much insulin. That's why you got low. For some reason, take it out of the basal every time.
Yeah.
Then blood sugars trend up because you don't have enough basal insulin, which causes you to have to bolus too much at meals, but you probably can't bring yourself to do it. So you under bolus a meal. The meal shoots up. The pressure of the high blood sugar gets to you. You correct it. And then as the correction's working, the food digests out of the system. There's nothing there to hold up the number. You crash down. And instead of seeing that process, you turn your basal down more.
Yeah.
Which just makes it worse. It's the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I about to say we changed probably the bolus numbers for food more than we'll see a trend over 3 days and be like, all right, well, something's obviously up, and we'll change his food ratio.
I think one of the most important things that we do that ends up being difficult for people to wrap their heads around and to implement, because there's no real rule to it, is the part where you just understand the impact of the food. I mean, this podcast forced me to talk about glycemic load and glycemic index because you people wouldn't listen to me when I just said, just bolus what you think the plate needs. Learn from last time and do it again. That really is how I do it. I look at a plate and I go, it's this much. If it doesn't work, I make a correction. Next time she eats that food, I take what we bolused plus the correction and I put it in. Now, I hear from people, Scott, I can't remember all that. I have a job, and I don't not understand that. But that's why one day I said to Jenny, we got to talk about glycemic load and glycemic index, as much as I don't want to, because that's not how I want to think about it. But at some point the podcast got so big that I was like, I have a responsibility here. I just, now I have to do it. So you guys are forcing me to learn more things and think about things differently because you're being resistant and not listening to me. And I have enough of that with my children. If someone would just listen, Chad, when I speak, that would be lovely. I just want one person not to argue with me, just to go, hey, the guy said do this, let's just do it. But that's an incredibly important part because, as I explained to anybody out that'll sit still and listener who asks, 10 carbs of one food doesn't impact your blood sugar the same way as 10 carbs of another food. And you can't just act like it does and then go, oh, I don't know what happened. I counted the carbs. You can't do that. But man, people do it. So
yeah. And that's like a lot of what like our extended family doesn't understand. My wife's sister the other day, they were talking about getting pizza, and my wife was just like shaking her head and she had to explain, you can have pizza, but it just means we're up till 12 midnight, 1 a.m. chasing protein and fat and stuff.
Yeah. So. You hear somebody talking about pizza at 7:00 and you start thinking about what you're what am I binge watching right now? Am I going to enjoy that? Will I be able to follow it when I'm tired? I always have a binge watch going that's easy to watch and one that's more that you have to focus on more. And I know that at a certain time, like right now I'm watching Deadwood, but the dialogue is so thick with like old timey euphemisms. Like you really have to pay attention to follow along. So I don't do that one after about 10 p.m. I need something more poppy, something a little more fillery after 10 so I can pay attention. But it is interesting, isn't it? When someone mentions pizza, you start doing the math in your head. I could probably, if this goes right, I could probably go to bed by midnight. If it goes wrong, I'm going to be up till 2. I got to get up in the morning at 7 to go to work. Is there any chance we could just have a nice wrap with we could put a tomato in it and sprinkle some cheese on top. It'll be just like pizza. Yeah, that sucks, man. Oh my God. And you're, it's understandable that other people don't think about it that way.
Yeah. And I have a cousin with type 1, and I had before his diagnosis, and that I had very little knowledge of what even like type 1 was from type 2. And all I knew about diabetes was Walter Brimley in the diabetes commercial. So
you know so little bit about it. You called him Walter Brimley, and it's Wilford Brimley.
Oh, well, there you go.
I don't know if you know the story about Wilford Brimley. His mom named him after a very famous sports star, and then realized everyone was going to call the name Wilford to everybody. So she killed him. And that's why he's the only Wilford you've ever heard of.
Oh.
It's back in 1850. It's a very long time ago. They pushed him down a mine, called it a prospecting accident. So it was a very sad story, but he got to be the only Wilford. So, and look how it didn't help him because you called him Walter.
Walter.
How many Walters do you know in your life?
One.
Yeah. I know two, and one of them's from MASH. So that's not a real person. That's a character. And they called him Radar anyway. So really nobody called him Walter ever. Do people watch MASH? I don't imagine they do. It must not be funny anymore.
My father watched it a lot growing up.
How old's your dad now?
He is 62.
That's making me feel bad about liking MASH. I got to be honest with you. Anyway, yeah, don't start watching MASH now because it had a 70s aesthetic where you'll just look and go, this isn't funny. And I'm watching it, and you know, I remember watching it when I was 12. So anyway, yeah, that's not, if you want a television recommendation, Justified is terrific.
Justified.
Oh,
write that down.
God, Justified. I'm enjoying Deadwood. I've gone into the modern Western phase of my life for some reason right now. I just watched a terrible show on Netflix called Longmire that I loved way more than I should have. And what's the one with Kevin Costner right now that I really enjoyed? It's almost like like they used to call them like nighttime soap operas, the way they were. I sound like my grandmother right now. Hold on a second, and I'll tell you the name of my story. What is wrong with me? Oh my God, I'm old. I don't recognize it completely, but I am. Kevin Costner's new. Why can all of a sudden I don't know how to use Google either? Hold on.
I have no idea.
What are you? Yellowstone.
Oh, okay. I've heard of that.
So good. Not good in a way like, you know, Hamlet. Not saying that. It's just, you know, they kill a lot of people for no good reason, and there's pretty landscapes. There you go. That's my high bar for television.
Yellowstone.
Yeah. Are you writing it down?
Yeah.
If you hate it, don't blame me.
75% Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. I don't even know what that means. To me, that when I see something like that, I'm so jaded about the internet. What I think is that it got popular, so they hired a bunch of people to go on and leave bad reviews for it. Like,
well, that's a good review. So I used to think that
75's good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good review.
Wait, does that mean that 75% of the people like it?
Yeah. I used to think that about Rotten Tomatoes. I thought the more Rotten Tomatoes you got, the worse it was. But no, it's a good thing.
Wow. Way to make something that's so confusing that someone can't follow it. What a business model. It must be the same person who came up with insulin sensitivity number going down as it gets stronger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Maybe that is why. All right. If the person who made Rotten Tomatoes is listening, I want to understand where that rating came from. Please call. I would like to know. So Chad, like, I really want to dig into how it feels like to realize you're being excluded in your child's care.
It's very frustrating, especially it is a toddler, a giant toddler, to keep his numbers that good and stuff. I just kind of so that kind of happened early on our last visit. It kind of involved me more just because, well, my wife for one told him, she's like, hey, Chad's behind a lot of these numbers, a lot of these changes. And at that time, I think we were having too many lows. So we were kind of seeking, some advice on what to do, but it was also summer. So, who knows? It seemed like once fall hit, his need for insulin went down, but, it's just frustrating to, it's almost like I'm invisible in there, and maybe it's just because the normal household, the father is putting in a lot of hours each week, and they just don't have the time to review numbers and go over treatment and stuff. I was able to dive in deeper just because of coronavirus and me working from home pretty much all summer. I'm back in the office now, and I'm, less hands off right now because I'm at work, but I still call in daily to see how things are going. And
so it would have just in general been nice if the physician would have added the extra sentence to say, hey, how are you guys dividing care here?
Yes.
And not just immediately disregard you. I have to tell you, as you're explaining that, I try to put myself in a classic woman's position in most of history, and I thought, man, this must be how women feel when people talk to their husbands and not to them, which I'm sure happens to ladies far more frequently than it happens to guys. So yeah, you might have just experienced a little bit of a reversal of that.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
That just tricked my mind too. Yeah.
You were finally in the scenario where people of power look to the female in the pairing and say, this must be the person in charge. And it struck you really poorly. Badly enough, by the way, that you were willing to write an email to a podcast and want to come on and talk about it.
Yeah.
Imagine if women stuck up for themselves like that. Podcast would be be very interesting, with people saying, I go into places and I went to a bank to get a mortgage and they talk to my husband and I make more money than he does and it doesn't seem to matter, and all the crap that girls go through. Plus they get their periods. It really isn't fair.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
No, it's terrible. I try to joke about it here, but it's never received well. I'll have to be honest with you. And Arden is very, anytime Arden has her period, and she'll just be like, leave me alone. Like, she's very, out front about it. She's like, this is not the time for you to be talking to me about this. I'm like, okay. It's like, wow, interesting tactic. My wife spent years telling me, I'm the same no matter what. I'm like, I don't think you are, but I'll go with you. Arden's just like, I am not the same. Leave me alone. I'm like, oh, geez. Excellent. At least she's sticking up for herself, and she's out in front of it. But no, seriously, you girls have to carry babies, and that period thing really seems like a horror. I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah, and I don't mean the act of it. I mean, having to go through it and the pain and the hormonal changes, and just watching how you have to adjust Arden's insulin for different, I don't mean times of the month like that, but honestly, different weeks in the month are, completely different. I was talking to a listener from England yesterday, trying to help her with her basal, and I said, okay, now will this just work for this week? Aren't you basically 2 or 3 different people through the month diabetes wise? Now I'm embarrassed. I've never spoken to her before, and I'm like, you're the ovulating you, you're the almost there you, and the actual event you, and she's like, yeah, I guess that's right. And so then we talked about how to, move her correction ratios and her basal and stuff like that as her body is looking for more insulin, and how to recognize when it and very suddenly happens, at least to Arden, needs to go back to the original setting. So it's, trust me, at least Carson doesn't have to do that.
Yeah, I'm my eyes are glazed over just thinking about that.
It really, if you can wrap your head around it, once you can see it, then it's just about the telltale signs, and then you see the signs and make the change. Now, obviously, with a glucose monitor, way easier to see those signs, because the signs really just are more difficult to bring down after a meal if it goes high. Looking like your insulin to carb ratio has gone up a little bit for meals, and that your basal's gone up. So as I see that happening, there's little turns to the dials we make the insulin stronger. But then as the as Yahtzee happens, as the I don't even know what to say. The event weird. I just want to say bleeding, but that seems wrong, so my mind can't find words. In case anyone's wondering what's happening inside of my head, as soon as that happens, I guess then the insulin needs for Arden go backwards. She needs less. Where I've heard the exact opposite from other people. But the truth is once it happens, it happens. And you just kind of follow along with it. Now, if I left it to Arden, you know, it would probably take her days to see, oh, my blood sugar's been high. And, you know, I don't think she'd see it as quickly as I do. But anyway, so Chad, let's go over a couple of things. You don't like being treated the way women have been treated throughout history. It makes you upset. Oh. I think that you didn't realize that I was going to turn this around on you like this, which I didn't plan on doing when we started talking.
I'm going to go through my wife's emails, see if she's been talking to you or something.
I just told you, I'm a mom at heart. I started defending the other side of like, you know, this is what happens to me. Because I guess now that we're talking about it, it is what happens to me, having been a stay-at-home dad in a situation like that. My most vivid memories of it happened around my kids' sports, where the men, you know, which you would think I'd be a party of, but which, by the way, I live in a town where a lot of people love baseball and softball. This town has won the Little League World Series for softball multiple times. So sports are a big deal around here. And my son is one of the only children from this town who plays baseball in college. You might think I know a little something about it, but when those collections of guys, coaches or fathers would happen, I was excluded like I was a mom.
Wow.
And it's, you know, no one ever once cared for my opinion about what was, even when they were sitting around sharing opinions. If I spoke, it was like, oh, look, Scott wants to say something. And I'm okay with it now, but it happened constantly. Maybe I really did see that side of it because of my own experience just now. And I'll just bleep this out, Chad. I'm not shitting on you for feeling that way. Like, I understand how you feel to be excluded like that. But I think that this generation would call that male privilege. Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't call it that because I'm 50 almost. And I hate all the
but maybe I'm considered a millennial, so yeah, maybe
that's how you would think of it. Yeah, I don't use words like woke and privilege and things like that in my life. I just think that, you know, things are shitty. And sometimes people are assholes, and, you know, it doesn't need a branding. It really is the internet that forced us to brand like basic concepts of life.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, male privilege just used to be called people didn't treat women well. That's, you know, and that's still what's happening, by the way, except now it has a name.
No, has a term.
So fancy. Chad, are you very worried that this episode is going to be called Chad Has Male Privilege? Because
I don't know. Maybe I'll embrace it. You know?
Don't worry. That's not the way I'm going. It occurred to me as a listener, you might right now be going, what is he going to call this episode? I don't give my, you can't use this anymore. Stop. Just hang up out of nowhere. But no, I think it's interesting because I see it happen to men in this situation constantly. And I see how it affects them. It makes them feel badly. When I see guys talking about it privately, their feelings are hurt. They know that their wives don't trust them with their kids. Moreover, they know that they don't have as much information and that they're not doing as much for their children as they want to be around the medical decisions. Mm-hmm. And it's really hurtful to them. You know, I can see that because I am a guy. I mean, the way they come off, you'd never, from a female perspective, we just look like idiots. You know what I mean? Like just ranting children. But I can see it, you know, for what it is, because I've felt that way too and don't do a good job of expressing myself. So, you know, for as good of a job as I do of expressing myself on the podcast around diabetes, I'm still a guy in my personal life and I still screw it up in my personal life constantly, you know. I'm forever thinking to myself, that's not what I meant. Why did I say that? You ever have that feeling, Chad?
17 times a day. Yeah.
That's not what I meant. Why did I say it that way? So, and I don't think that's an easy thing for a person of the opposite sex to appreciate, just as I don't understand what the hell my wife's talking about sometimes. But I see it. So for ladies listening, I've tried to say this throughout the podcast a number of different ways, but I don't think your husbands are disinterested. I think they're concerned they're going to mess something up, or just intrinsically believe that you're better at it than they are, and so they don't want to get in the way. Or some of them are lazy. I mean, some of them are playing, PlayStation. I get that. But also, we do stuff like that sometimes so that we don't have to be put in the position to fail. Guys aren't good at failing. Not that anybody is, but we take it pretty badly when it's hardwired in you that you're supposed to go outside, clunk something over the head, drag it back to the house so we can eat it. And if we don't, we all die. When you can't do those things, it's depressing a little bit, but luckily you don't have to feel like that around the diabetes. That's pretty cool.
But it is also difficult kind of co-parenting, co-managing. Me and my wife had our arguments over what to do. Nothing really heated, just kind of, I just, hey, can we feed them something different, or, dose differently? But it's been fine, and so far it's worked out well.
Around here, the longest fight has been pre-bolusing. So not that everybody doesn't understand how important it is, but the people who aren't me are not as diligent about it. And I have just been steadfastly just banging that drum, and they've gotten so much better at it. And by they, I'm obviously speaking around my wife. Because my son's not bolusing Arden for anything. We're talking about food with her. And she's just busy. She's a busy person. She works, a lot. And, just like you hear everybody else say, like, it's hard to think a half an hour before a meal, hey, where's my blood sugar? What should I be doing right now? Or an hour before, let's correct this 120 now so that it's easier at dinner time, that kind of stuff. And so I'll just, I'm like, but I don't always say it nicely. Like, I'm way nicer to you people than I am to my own family. Yeah. So I'm just like, come on, could someone pre-bolus? Like, I sometimes, I'm like, if I leave the house for an hour and I come back, I'll look at Arden and I'll go, because I left, your blood sugar doesn't get to go up 50 points. like you're making me feel like, but here's the other side of it. It makes me feel like I have to stay here. And that's not fair to me. Right? Like, I shouldn't have to feel like that. Like, everybody can take their little piece of it. But I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is, I think that in general, some ways that men act could easily be misunderstood for apathy, when I think it's more that we just don't want to screw things up very badly.
Yeah. No. I think that's 100% correct. And some of those, like, those diabetes dads groups on like Facebook and other, there's not, most of the dads are very outspoken and they kind of know what they're doing just because they're part of the group. But there are a few dads out there that, seeking advice and looking for, hey, my wife wants me to help out more, and just, kind of step one, ask them for help on step one. So.
Yeah. Well, it's also hard to ask people for help when you don't sometimes know what it is you need them to do.
Yeah.
And I think that can happen too, where sometimes it's like, I need help because this isn't going the way I want it to. And then you're now going to enlist another person who has not been involved, who doesn't know anything about it, to try to figure out the things you couldn't figure out while you're involved. And then that's just, then you've let them down.
Yeah.
And that's really the interplay I'm talking about, is that, I know we don't talk about the world like this much anymore, but it's still true. Like, like for most people, there's expectations you have of your spouse. And when that person doesn't come through, you might not consciously think, oh, I picked a loser. You know what I mean? But they're inside your brain somewhere is going, a need has been let down. She or he was supposed to do this thing. They don't do it. And now I have a lesser feeling about the decision I've made. And that's how 25 years later, you end up going, could you get out of here, please? And we're all trying to avoid that. And so people defend themselves by not putting themselves in positions where they can let their spouses down. And then you get this, which is you feel like you've been left alone to take care of diabetes by a person who doesn't care, when really what happened is very likely that person just very badly doesn't want to let you down, and they don't know what to do. And not everybody figures it out like Chad did. because not everybody gets an engineer's brain and COVID-19 to sit around the house and stare at their newly diagnosed kid.
Stare at numbers.
Yeah, seriously. If you were at work during that, if it wasn't for COVID, you might not be as involved.
No, but so he was put on the pump in December, and at that time we were kind of scared to death of insulin, scared of giving too much.
Sure.
And Christmas night, we were back at CHOP just because he had a stomach bug and an ear infection, and he wasn't eating, he was vomiting, and his blood sugar was through the roof and ketones. So we ended up back at CHOP, and that kind of scare made us less afraid of insulin. And then we started listening to your podcast, and it's just like, we weren't. I didn't want to be back in that situation again. So
it took a kind of a DKA thing to take your fear. All you really did was shift your fear to the other side of the scale.
Yes.
Right. You were scared of being low right until you saw what happens when you got high, and you're like, okay, let's be scared of that instead.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I think that really is the game. Honestly, It really is. It's to realize that none of this is, completely baby-proof safe. Yeah. And what side of the game are we going to play in? Are we going to play in the side where if we do things right, we're going to have these successes that lead to better health? Or are we going to, go on the other side where doing it right just means an elevated blood sugar, but nobody gets low. So that's the trade-off. And I think that really is in most people's minds. Like, that's the trade-off they're making. I'm the one who's saying, and hopefully other people listening are thinking, that that's not a real decision that has to be made. It isn't either or. It isn't either be, have an A1C in the 6s and get low a lot, or have an A1C in the 7s or 8s and never get low. I don't think that's the case. I think people who have A1Cs in the 7s and 8s get low too. I think they get low more viciously than people who have their insulin so well balanced that they can sit in a 5 A1C. Arden doesn't get low like in a scary way. I don't think she's had a scary low. I mean, I don't remember one in the last couple of years. And by that I mean, like, oh my God, get juice, she's gonna die. Drink this, like that kind of stuff. Like, I don't remember that happening anymore because her insulin's so well dialed in that aside of a real anomaly, that it almost can't happen.
Yeah, and with her age, I'm guessing she needs a lot more insulin now. It's easier for you guys to fine tune that. You can adjust by 5%, 10%. So
yeah, you're not going from a 0.05 to a 0.1.
One, doubling his insulin. Yeah,
I've doubled his insulin by giving him 1/10 of a unit.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's not the case. Well, this is a really tough time, and you're right. It will get easier as body weight comes, and the difference between a half a unit and a unit's not really that great anymore. I've come to realize that in the last year or so, it used to take, if I had to make a wild bolus to break a stuck blood sugar, it was 2 units for Arden. Like, if Arden's blood sugar was 170 and it wouldn't move, like, I could give her 2 units to break it free. That's more like 3 units now.
Wow.
So I keep wondering when it's going to be more and more. We actually, Chad, let's tell a story here. So at Thanksgiving, we screwed up at Thanksgiving. For all of I put up a Thanksgiving episode. I got literally hundreds of thank yous afterwards about, oh my God, my Thanksgiving was so much better because of this episode. Mine wasn't. So because I was up cooking all morning. Arden's blood sugar was terrific. She's upstairs getting a slow start to the day. She's up, and my wife's family has a tradition of making these terrible cinnamon buns on holiday mornings. And I say terrible because they're packaged and there's just nothing. It's just sugar and wrapped in more sugar with some sugar. And I know how to bolus for them. It's not a big deal. But there's like 55 carbs in one of them. Wow. And I text Arden. I say, hey, Mom's putting those cinnamon buns in the oven now. And Arden's blood sugar is like 95. Like, I'm like, so why don't you bolus 10 carbs right now? And then, we're going to do a little more in a little bit and blah, blah, blah. So she says, okay, she boluses the 10 carbs. And I text her a little while later as the cinnamon buns are getting closer. I was like, now I want you to put in 7 units. And I figured out the carbs for it to, I was like, but I want to get 7 units going right now. Keep in mind that by the time this is over for this freaking cinnamon bun, I'm going to need to give her like 14 units of insulin because it's just no one should be eating these things. I want to be clear. Right. And so I said 7 units. She goes, I can't. And I'm like, what? Just give yourself 7 units. And she's like, no. And I'm like, will it not let you? So now like I'm running through like all the things that I'm not sure, like, why can't she just give herself insulin? And she finally texts back, I'm out of insulin. The pump's almost empty. And I'm like, oh, okay. Shit. And then I was like, all right, come downstairs. We'll change your pump real quick, but we're going to inject this other insulin. Mm-hmm. So I kind of feel like I'm being slick, and we have some Fiasp left from when we tried the Fiasp. I'm like, well, I wonder if I can't do this in a way where she won't have to wait and she can still eat this cinnamon bun. Well, I draw up a lot of insulin in a syringe. It's like 10 units, right? And Arden's never gotten a syringe with more than probably like 2 or 3 units in it. So she goes, whoa, what are we doing? And so I explained the whole thing to her, and she goes, makes sense, but wow, that's a lot of insulin in that syringe. And I said, yeah, I'm like, my buddy growing up as an adult would give himself sometimes like 30 or 40 units of that insulin, that old insulin he used to use in this big syringe. And she's like, it was like full. And I was like, yeah. She's like, well, and then she couldn't imagine it. Like, I think she thought it was going to just run out of her body when we pushed the plunger down. Seriously, she couldn't like wrap her head around it. So we put it in, and I was like, see, it stayed in. She goes, huh. She's really stunned, and I had it. Like I did it. I really did. For 45 minutes after she ate that cinnamon bun, her blood sugar was 110. I was like, I am a genius. Those people are right, and then suddenly, boom, it was not enough. And the one thing I didn't account for, because I had used what I thought was enough Fiasp, was that, when you put a new pump site on, your basal's not working. You don't have that pressure. I needed to bolus for the basal, and I didn't. So Arden's blood sugar got out ahead of me twice over the next hour and a half. I cut it down at 150, but then I went back to cooking, and then the next thing I knew, what I thought was falling did that. That little hump on the Dexcom, it starts heading down, then it rolls around and comes back up again, right? That happened. I had to be more aggressive. I stopped it at 180, and then I had to hit it again because she got up to like 220 or something like that. So it's all just because the insulin was, it was messed up. The delivery of the insulin was all messed up because I changed, for clarity, we changed an insulin pump and immediately went into a cinnamon bun. And I had enough hubris to think I could do it, but I missed. But once I saw that happening, I said to Kelly, I'm like, I'm not messing with this. And I gave her a lot of insulin. Like I put her blood sugar into a fall on purpose and then caught it so that the rest of Thanksgiving wouldn't be ruined. So if you see Arden's 24-hour graph for Thanksgiving, it's fascinating because she's between 70 and like 100 for 21 hours, and then there's this like mountain in the middle that I don't usually see.
Six Flags roller coaster.
Yeah, it's worse. It's like free fall. It went up so sharply and came down so sharply you couldn't even call it a roller coaster. But I to me the key is that as badly as it all went, I knew what to do at every step of the way, and I never made her low. And that to me is like, that's how I know I'm good at it. Like she didn't get low afterwards ever. And then right away, boom, the rest of the day was right back where I expected it to be again. I got the insulin in where it needed to be. I cleared out the carbs and right back in the game. I was proud of it actually by the time it was over. I was disappointed and then proud. It was a weird feeling.
With the cinnamon bun.
Oh my God, they're the worst. Like, I don't know who makes some Pillsbury or something. They come in like that cardboard roll. Like, you literally should not eat it. It's just bad for you. And
my father was recently diagnosed with type 2, and he cleared out his fridge, and I think like he brought over two of those cans. Yeah. It's like,
we can't use these.
Yeah. And I was like, Dad, this is why you were just diagnosed with type 2.
Yeah, you're asking too much of your system, Dad. And this right here is you asking too much of it. And I want to be clear, like, Arden has one of those cinnamon buns like on Thanksgiving morning and Christmas morning. And that's really the only time of year she ever has them. And I ate one of them, and I have to be honest with you, it was sugarific. I don't know why marketers don't just go right for it and just say, oh my God, so much sugar. You're going to love this. It's, crack, but in food is what it should say, but it's just all processed food, and which even makes it worse. Like the carbs are, like, if you counted the carbs on those muffins and just bolus the carbs, I don't see how your blood sugar wouldn't be 500.
Yeah.
So
probably higher.
Yeah, it's just insane how impactful that is, and it definitely tells me don't eat it. And I don't just mean if you have diabetes; I just mean in general. This is clearly not okay.
Yeah, once or twice a year, and that's it.
And still, be prepared to be a little dopey afterwards. From all the insulin that your body's going to be releasing. Even if you don't have type 1, just all the insulin your body's going to be releasing, you're going to be tired as hell. Chad, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot. We covered football, menstruation cycles of teenage girls.
Everything you thought you were going to talk about today, as you got on privilege. About your 2-year-old little boy with type 1 male privilege. That's right. I'm going to call this episode "Boys Have Feelings." What do you think of that?
Boys have. I like it. And my wife wants me to talk about more of my feelings. She was saying the other day there was a children's cancer commercial on, and I started getting teary eyed and stuff. And she's told me, "I love when you cry." Yeah.
I don't believe them, Chad. And I've just lumped every woman together. Either. Yeah. Hold on a second. All right, we're down a rabbit hole here, Chad. I have always been a sensitive kid, like as growing up, and I'm a sensitive adult, and I'll cry at almost any movie. Adulation from a group, in a film will make me cry every time. Like when they let Rudy play, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I just start crying. I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna let him play. He works so hard, and, they're gonna let him in. It's gonna be something. They high school puts a video up of the kid that helps with the team who's disabled, and they let him run a touchdown back. I'm just crying. Yeah. Like just so you know, if people come on the podcast and say the podcast helps them, I'm like, okay, it's good, thanks. So I've always been that person. I'm also not masculine in other ways, but I don't think they mean it. I think not everybody. I shouldn't say they, like I'm generalizing every woman on the planet, but in general, I just said I shouldn't generalize. And then I followed it up with in general, but in general, I think you do want to see people open up a little bit, but there's a line where I do think there's some hard wiring in you. That's like, that's the guy I need to, kill the thing and drag it back to the house. Like he can't be crying all the time. I killed a deer. Like, that's not what you're looking for.
Yeah.
You're looking for, hey, it's out front on the step. Let's cut the skin off it and eat this thing. I don't, I don't disagree that being vulnerable is a bad thing in a personal relationship. I think you should be, and I am. But I do think you pay a masculine tax for it, if that makes sense. I do think you lose some points somewhere else in the back of somebody's brain. And not all the time, maybe, but once you turn into me and you're just like, you ever see that horrible movie, Life as a House? You haven't, because it's terrible.
No.
But it's
I'll look it up real quick. How many Rotten Tomatoes do you think it has?
It's got a lot of rotten something. It's about somebody who has cancer. I don't really remember the whole thing. All I can tell you is my wife wanted to see it. I was like, I don't want to go see this terrible movie, but I went with her because I'm a good guy, and we're in the theater and the lights are coming up at the end, and she looks and she was like, "Are you crying?" I'm like, "No." But yeah, I don't think that then makes my wife look at me and go, oh, I should probably take him out in the car and have sex with him.
Yeah.
I think it makes her think, I hope if they come for us, he can protect us. But I don't think he can. What if he starts talking about the war and how sad it is, and like in the middle of when I need him at the front door shooting? I don't know. Like, I'm not disappointed with who I am, and I'm not sad that I'm willing to be like that. But I will be honest and say that I grew up with my mom as a single mother telling me, oh, women are going to like that you're sensitive. But I think what she was really saying was, I wish your father was a little sensitive.
Yeah.
And I did find through dating that I don't think that's what at least the girls I was meeting, more than less were looking for. Like, I really think that they wanted more whatever standard masculinity is. Mm-hmm. But I found my sweet spot here. They haven't kicked me out, so I'm allowed to stay. I always tell the kids, I'm like, listen, when mom gets rid of me, I need you on my side a little bit. I was like, and they're like, what? I'm like, eventually it's going to happen. There's no way she can put up with me forever. So I'm just saying, it's like, when it happens, if you're older and you're not in the house anymore, just believe that I tried as hard as I could. Anyway, Chad, when do you think you're getting kicked out? You probably have time. Your kids are younger.
Yeah. Hopefully I'll make it to college. Carson reaches college.
Oh, so you're going to at least need to be there to make another baby that looks like Carson. Like, she's going to need you for that. And then she's going to want you to help pay for school without arguing with you. Plus she'll figure out in like 4 or 5 more years that she doesn't have to have sex with you if she doesn't want to anymore. So that takes away a lot of the burden. But also your niece that you said you have custody of, is it your niece or her niece?
Her niece.
Yeah. So see, you got that going for you.
Yeah.
You're doing that extra family thing. So that'll probably buy you 5 years. I think you could make it to like 2044.
Wow.
Good for you, Chad. Do you not think every guy just wonders when it's over?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they say divorce rates are going down. So,
do you think that's a financial thing? Like,
probably.
I can't afford to leave.
Yeah.
Situation.
I can't afford 2 Christmases.
I don't like him, but I do like my car. Yeah. So, and if I just drive in the car more, I won't be around him as much. This all makes sense. And I'm not saying because you're providing. I'm saying that I think most people have a 2-income situation. Mm-hmm. And so you're hearing divorce rates are going down?
Yeah, I've read it the other day. Now it's kind of skewed because not many people are getting married. So
they can't get divorced.
Yeah, exactly. It is one of those one-liner like articles, the headline article, and then you go and read to it, and but the more successful marriages are the people that go to college and kind of wait before they get.
Oh, I tell my kids all the time, like, 30 is probably the low number for where I would ask you to get married if I got to be in charge of it. Is it? Yeah. 2019, the U.S. divorce rates fell to a 50-year low in 2019.
Yeah.
But you're telling me if I keep reading, what I'm going to learn is that marriage rates are also down. So there's less people eligible for divorce.
Yeah.
Wow, it's a big drop.
Yeah.
Look at that. 1970. 85. Your wife's going to listen to this. She's like, so what you end up talking about is when we're going to get divorced? This is great. 85% number of newly married people get per 1,000 unmarried population at age 15 plus. The U.S. marriage rate reaches all-time low. It went from, in the 70s, this number is at 85.9. In the 80s, it was 68.8. By the time you get to 2010, 35.1. It's 33.2 in 2019. I don't really know what the numbers represent because I'm trying not to read while I'm talking to you. Yeah. But it's a harsh drop. Wow. Yeah. Next thing we should Google is have marriage. Oh, wait. Here it is. the U.S. marriage rate just hit an all-time low in 2019.
Yeah.
There's the rest of it.
It was clickbait. Yeah.
Hey, you can't get divorced if you don't get married. Well, that's my common sense. I'm always telling people, like, if you don't get high, you can't get high. So just don't do it. Oh, my gosh. All right, Chad, you're delightful. Thanks for coming on and doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Seriously, I'm really thrilled that you're doing so well so early on in diagnosis.
Oh, and Scott, it's all to you, man. Like, I think, all I can think of is what my son's diagnosed at 2. He's gonna have, the rest of his life with crappy blood sugar numbers and stuff. And my wife started listening to you, and I listened to you, especially your Bold with Insulin podcast, and that changed our life, and we'll change Carson's life. He'll have a healthy, normal can be life because of you and your podcast.
Oh, that's really nice of you to say. Thank you. Tell him to grow up and learn how to be a quarterback, so in my declining years, I don't have to watch the garbage I watched last night. I mean, honestly.
Will do.
When you're watching a sporting event, you think, I honestly feel like I could have done better there, and yet I know I can't. That's the horrible feeling I have watching the Eagles now. At this point, I'm like, I think I could block for a half a second.
Yeah.
Like, at least running over.
I could have done. That was like, I think it was the Broncos over the weekend. They couldn't field a single quarterback because coronavirus, and I read the stat line to the guy they played quarterback, and he was like 1 for 9 for 15 yards. And I was like, I could have done that.
Yeah, I definitely could have accomplished that. Well, I have to be honest with you. I thought the NFL completely dropped the ball this weekend, because as soon as I heard that story, I wanted to watch the Denver Broncos football game.
Yeah,
and
so did I.
Yeah.
I turned it on. It came on right at 4:00. I turned it on just I watched a couple possessions for the Broncos, and I was like, wow, this is really bad.
Well, you're lucky, because I couldn't even find it on television here. But I didn't want to watch him fail. Like, I really thought, this is fascinating. Like, this is an athletic person who has no business doing this thing, being put in it at the most difficult level. Like, I wonder how. Like, I just thought it would be interesting to watch him try. And you don't ever get that opportunity. Yeah, but I couldn't find the game anywhere, so I couldn't watch it. I did watch highlights, and the one thing I noticed was that the arm strength that a successful pro quarterback has is insane compared to everybody else. Because this kid threw a nice ball, but when he tried to go down the field, he just did not have enough to get the ball there before the cornerback could react and step in front of the ball. And I thought, wow, if this cornerback is this good but can't make a play like this in a normal football game, that means that the quarterback's arms are just way more powerful than you think. So the next time you see a guy drop a ball in an NFL football game and you think, just catch it, I guarantee if he threw it at you like that, it would kill you.
My fingers would fall off.
Your hands would just break, and it would hit you in the face, and that'd be the end of it. So, yeah, maybe be a little. These guys are, they're just insane athletes, because this kid, like I said, I saw him throw an out pattern, maybe 25 yards down the field, and it's a good ball. He was set up well. His mechanics were good. The ball traveled well, and the cornerback looked like he had time to have a sandwich before he stepped in front of it. And yeah, he'll never be a quarterback again in the NFL. But I think good for him, man. Going out there and trying that, that's I thought that was ballsy as hell. That was really something, Anyway, all right, Chad, thanks so much. I appreciate you doing this. Hey, huge thanks to Chad for coming on the show and sharing so openly. And I want to remind you again about the T1D exchange. Past participants like you have helped to bring increased coverage for test strips, Medicare coverage for CGMs, and changes to the ADA guidelines for pediatric A1C goals. And it's exciting to imagine what your participation could lead to next. T1Dexchange.org/Juicebox. Support Type 1 research and support the Juicebox Podcast. And don't forget, if you're looking for those diabetes pro tip episodes, they begin at episode 210 in your podcast player or can be found at diabetesprotip.com.